Or in your own words, can you say, like, in your own life, why did you stop doing what you were doing? And for those that don't know, Jeff's been on the podcast before. He's a Ranger, and then so he's super tough. He's had a bunch of his own businesses as well. You had a gym as well at one point, doing a bunch of real estate stuff now. Has his mastermind, teaches, coaches. Anyways, so he understands, but why was this important for you to be like, oh shit, if I need to really get my stuff together for my family and my kids so that I can have financial freedom in my family? What was the motivation there?
Man, I think it was just because, like, I understand, like, this is going to sound weird, but like the underlying emotions of money and the stress that go along with it steal a lot of our opportunity to live to our potential, whether it's being a father or a husband or any of that stuff. And like, because I know I've lived it in my life where I've been wrapped up with like not understanding like where our money was coming from, or the stress of going to get it, or my wife needing to spend more money than I wanted her to, or like all of that shit, right? Like, and I think what that does is when I talk about underlying emotions, the surface level emotion comes across as like anger or like whatever. You're yelling at the kids, but it's all actual anxiety and fear from like not understanding the money enough, not understanding the finances enough, and not feeling comfortable that like if I get run over by a bus tomorrow, like what the fuck happens to all of this?
Right.
Because like I've got 4 kids under 10 years old, and I've got a wife at home as well, right? And we homeschool our kids, and we built this life for ourselves. But like ultimately, would it go on without me?
Right.
And the mortality question, I think a lot of, I mean, your audience can relate to it in a big way, I think. But for a long time, you kind of just stick your head in the sand and say, I don't know what I don't know. And it's scary, yes, and it stresses me out when the credit card bills come in or whatever. But instead, I'm just going to be an asshole and like disconnect and drink 12 beers tonight instead of like just understanding and learning and trying to kind of take the pressure off that valve a little bit.
Yeah.
And I know that if I can teach people, like there's nothing special about me, man. I came from nowhere. Like Central Illinois, single parent home, like very similar. You and I have a background that's similar. I know that.
Yeah.
But like the way I came up is just, I did not believe conventional sources were the way to get things done. When I looked around and nobody was doing like what I wanted to be doing. So I went and I sought answers.
Do you
think
that is something that you were kind of like who you are down to your core, or is that because of our time in special operations? Because I'm the exact same way. I don't think conventional methods are the way to get things done, especially if that's the ones everybody's talking about.
I think that comes from our birth to 7 years old.
Okay.
Like for me, like, because I believe that that's ingrained in you at a very young age. And like Ed Milet talks about this, about growing up with a father, an alcoholic father, and the skills that he developed under 7 years old that allow him to kind of read people and look for certain situations. So for you and I would say that growing up, we kind of were like, we had to survive at a very young age. Right. So like when I look around at everybody else, I have always since a very young age said, if everybody's going in that direction, I am not fucking following, because like that bad things are going to happen over there. Yeah. And so I just kind of feel like it, but that also drew us to special operations. And I think that was one of the most interesting things about the melting pot that is special operations when you get there. Like black, brown, red, blue, like whatever the fuck color they are, like whatever background. There's cowboys and there's city boys and there's fucking everything in between.
There's a theme to a personality. Yeah. And the backstories always seem very similar.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like a rugged individual, and they have a healthy questioning of authority.
Yeah.
In almost every case. Like most of us came from like jail or juvie and shit like that, and we got out and like
Right.
Straight into special operations.
Yeah.
Uncle Sam wants you, son. And so,
sign up here.
But I think that level of skepticism and questioning led me straight in. So I went into the corporate world, and I went straight into khakis and polos and all that fucking shit, cubicles. And like everybody was like, you need to track in and put your money in your 401k and do all this other stuff. And I'm like, well, that doesn't make much sense to me. Like, you're going to take all my money for 40 years as long as I show up here in this cubicle over and over and over again. And then you're going to promise me this payday later. And like, that just never sat well with me. And so, I mean, I bought a 7-unit apartment complex when I was 26 years old. That was the first real estate purchase I made outside of a personal residence when I was 24. So I was always trying to put my money to work for myself because for me, it made sense that it should pay me tomorrow, even if it's less money.
Yeah.
Cause like, that's the argument that everyone gives you is like, if you put $1,000 in your 401k in 50 fucking years, it'll be worth $1 million.
Who gives a shit
but
in
like,
50 years?
But for me, like I also saw another formula where I could put $1,000 into this other thing, and then it would give me $15 a month starting next month. And I'm like, oh, okay. So that's cash. Like, that speaks to me. So how many thousands do I have to put in there before $15 adds up to a little something?
Mm-hmm.
And so I've just, and then I went on this journey of like information gathering. I'm like, who is doing this that's not, because a lot of times, I mean, it's much better with the internet. It's much better with all the access to information that we had. But like, honestly, a lot of this information, like, we just didn't know at
what
like
was out there since
$1 million and below of net worth.
Yeah, but it's been out there for 100 years or plus.
Yep. That's why the book I recommend to everybody is What Would the Rockefellers Do?
Yep.
So like, and that lays it out. That lays the life insurance, infinite banking like model out like to a T. Like these 10 families that survived the Great Depression to be like what would now be trillionaires, and they all used this particular product.
Yeah.
And so like, okay, I'm just a big fan of following what the smartest people I know are doing. And I'm like, hey, if I can get in there, if this is $1 million entry fee, can I get in for $1,000 and try it? And I just kind of followed that path, and it's started to build. It's not an instantaneous thing though. That's where like in our culture is built on instant gratification for everything, right? Like most people can't do anything for more than 3 months. And so like when I say put in $1,000 and get $15 back, most people that are listening to this podcast would be like, fuck off. That's stupid. Like, I'm not saying you lose your $1,000 altogether. I'm just saying that's what it kicked off in a month. Right. Like, and that's just a hypothetical example, but most people would laugh at that. Mm-hmm. But the way my brain works, I'm like, well, if I get 10,000 in there, it's $150. That would like take me out to dinner or whatever. Yeah. Like, so, and I gamify it backwards like that. Like, what do I need to do to pay my rent? What do I need to do to pay my mortgage? What do I need to do to pay the light bill? And then you can build in like little celebrations as you get to those levels. Yeah. What do you have to do to pay for the car? Like all kinds of stuff like that.